Uh, Today I'm going to present a case of inguinal hernia.
Yes.
And a
Yes.
59-year-old male, Mr. Shanmugam from Perungudi, watchman by occupation, presented with complaints of swelling and pain in left groin for the past 1 month.
Okay, Praveen, we'll wait here. I'll start. First thing is, you are going to go to a groin hernia. Each case, when you are seeing, there will be some ideas, some aim should be there. For groin hernias, we have to establish three things: whether it is a direct inguinal hernia or a femoral hernia. Okay, if it is inguinal hernia, it should be either direct or indirect. That's what we are to decide, and then we have to see whether it is an uncomplicated hernia or a complicated hernia. Okay, that will decide. These are all the things we have to finalize, find out from examination. That is the idea behind this, and that's how we will go start going about it. Okay, right. So we'll start with 15. Previous slide. Go to the previous slide. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Hello, sir. Change agada, sir.
Okay, I'm hearing it. Yes, tell me. Present, Praveen.
Sir, slide searching.
Change.
59-year-old male. Screen change agala.
Change
Screen
agadu.
is.
Okay. 59-year-old male, Mr. Shanmugam from Perungudi, watchman by occupation, presented with complaints of swelling and pain in the left groin for the past 1 month. And if you're presenting in us,
We will just start there. Stop there. It is a 59-year-old man. 59-year-old man. What is the possibility? Is it could be a, if it is an inguinal hernia, can it be direct or indirect?
Direct, sir.
Yes.
It's most commonly nearly it could be direct.
Yes. Why do you, how do you get direct hernias? How do you get it?
At any age group? Direct hernia mostly due to awkward causes because of increased intra-abdominal pressure due to chronic cough and straining, constipation, like such,
Yes.
and malignancy, space occupying lesion like that.
First and foremost, you have to understand two things. Indirect hernia occurs through the persistent processus vaginalis. Persistent process vaginalis, which is normally present in the fetal age group, that has not disappeared. That hernia is, that sac is still present. Then it becomes, the hernia happens through that. Then it is called as indirect inguinal hernia. Direct hernia, the parotid process vaginalis closes, but there are some mechanisms which protect the inguinal canal. Inguinal canal is a defect in the anteabdominal wall. So there is a defect there, indirect ring, direct ring, and the inguinal canal, deep ring, superficial ring, and the canal. They are defects in the, they are protected by various mechanisms normally. But as the age progresses, when the muscle gets weakened and the weakness happens, then the protective mechanism is lost, then they can develop direct hernias. So when you are thinking about a 59-year-old, chance of direct hernia is a little bit more. This is what we have it in our mind. We'll go with the history of prosthetic illness now.
Swelling in the left groin, present for 1 month, which was insidious in onset and started as a small swelling and gradually increased in size to attain the present size and confined to the inguinal region. Increase in size on physical activity, standing and coughing, partially decreases on lying down and fully reducible by patient manually.
Okay, this is very, very important history in the case of hernias. The swelling disappears on lying down, fully manual or whatever it is, but it appears only on standing or increase in size when the patient is straining or anything like that, the swelling increases. This is a typical history of hernia. You will not have anywhere it is. This is very, very important. Left groin is mentioned correctly. It is not mentioned as left inguinal region. Left groin is good. And insidious onset and gradually increase in size. Main thing on the swelling, when does the swelling appears? That is what I want.
Only during physical activity and
when the patient
coughing,
stands up, does it appear? When the patient stands up, does it appear?
No, no, sir. Only on physical activities, sir. Lifting
What
weights,
physical activity?
like
cough or okay, that's what. So the swelling is reappearing appears only on coughing or increased intra-abdominal straining or something like that, right? Okay, next.
yes. Pain in the left groin for the last 1 month. This is a dragging pain, insidious onset, confined to the swelling only. Pain is on and off and relieved with rest.
Okay.
No history of abdominal pain, abdominal distension, vomiting, or constipation. The future suggestive of obstructions. No history of chronic cough, difficulty in micturition, difficulty in defecation. This is a future suggestive of precipitating risk factors, and no history of
all these questions to rule out precipitating causes, right?
Yes.
Yes. Precipitating causes. Yes, continue.
No history of sudden heavy weight lifting, no history of trauma, no history of sudden increase in size of swelling and discoloration of skin over the swelling, no history of irreducibility, no history of swelling elsewhere in the body.
Yes, good.
Past history, sir.
Okay.
History of similar swelling.
So in the swelling history taking, you have got a clear swelling in the groin, which appears on standing, coughing or straining. It appears and it lies down. On immediately lying down, it reduces. This is a typical history of hernia. There is no question about we are moving towards hernia. Now what we have to do is we have to find out whether it is an inguinal hernia or femoral hernia and whether it is direct or indirect if it is inguinal hernia. And then we have to find out whether it's a complicated or uncomplicated. This is what the further history is going to say. So now, whatever history, your abdominal pain, chronic cough, heavy weight, trauma, all these things you are telling, it helps you in the whether you have any precipitating cause. Why you want to know this precipitating cause?
Sir, before surgery, we have to correct the precipitating factors.
Yes, exactly. Fantastic. So the precipitating cause tells us whether the patient, if you do offer surgery without correcting the precipitating cause, the patient might have recurrence of hernia. So first you have to address these things. If any precipitating cause could be found, here you can't find out any precipitating cause, right?
Yes, sir.
Now you have come to the pain. The pain you have mentioned about it. Pain. What does the pain indicate?
Sir, if obstruction or strangulation, only the patient gets pain, sir. In case of obstruction, there will be colicky abdominal pain.
Okay.
But in strangulation, dull aching pain, which is continuous dull aching pain.
Right. Good.
And the abdominal distension, vomiting, constipation, all suggestive of obstruction, sir. And sudden.
Now you have pain here. The patient has pain here. Why do you think this pain is there for this patient? Do you think obstruction or any complication is there?
No, sir. No.
No, nothing is there. No. Then why do you have pain? Dragging type of pain.
Stretch of the mesentery.
Yes. The dragging pain, maybe the mesentery is dragging into the, it is dragging, stretch on the mesentery might be causing this dragging pain. Most important thing in the history, one more thing I want you to notice, it is on up here, when the patient lies down, it is not reducing completely, it is reducing only partially. After some manipulation, it reduces completely. What does it indicate? What does it indicate? It tells me that this patient can go in for complications. That is the most important thing you should know. Okay, because it is not reducing
Okay.
spontaneously. If the swelling is up on standing, it reduces immediately. Then its chances of obstruction is very, very less. One. Suppose after manipulation only it reduces now, that means there is some amount of difficulty in reduction. Chance of going in for irreducibility or obstruction hernia is very high in this patient. That is what we have to keep in mind. That is one thing. What else it tells us? Direct or indirect? Does it give you any evidence in this history? Does it give you anything?
Sir, direct, sir.
Direct hernia comes just like this. The abdominal wall is there is a defect there, the hernia comes just like this. So immediately on lying down, it will go inside. It will come and it will go. That's all it will happen. So it will reduce immediately. It takes some time to reduce, or he has to manipulate something to reduce. Now, chances of indirect hernia is high with this history. Are you able to follow me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Past history of
Yes.
similar swelling in the right side for which elective or open hernia surgery was done 3 years back, and
For
the
the right
post-op
side.
period was uneventful.
Very good.
Yes, sir. No history of diabetes, no history of hypertension, no history of bronchial asthma, TB, epilepsy, and no history of jaundice.
Okay.
No history of previous surgery.
Very good. Right.
Personal history, consumes a mixed diet and smoker for the past 30 years. Each day, four cigarettes.
Okay.
Pack years, it comes around 6.
Okay.
And consumes alcohol occasionally. Normal bowel and bladder habits. Family history, no relevant family history.
Okay, but he smokes for 30 years, but you are very sure he doesn't have a history of coughing, right?
Yes, sir.
You have to be a little bit careful because he is smoking for 30 years. Chance of getting chronic bronchitis is very high. So, which might be one of the precipitating cause in hernia. Okay, so you have to be very sure that there is no cough. You can go back once more and ask the patient also when you have smoking history, right?
Okay. But smoking itself a risk factor for hernia.
Why smoking itself is risk factor?
Sir, it's anyway it loosens the collagen like thing.
Right. All these things are very, very main thing is smoking affects the cough, the collagenolysis, all these things are all not true exactly, but there is smoking direct relationship is mainly because of coughing. Your chronic bronchitis, they continues to cough, the muscles can get weak, they can have hernia, the precipitating cause. That's a major thing. Okay, anyway, you have the smoking. I'm not disputing that, but remember to go and verify it. Okay?
Yes, okay.
Okay, right, fine. Next.
On general examination, the patient was conscious oriented, built and moderate in hydration status fair, no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, no pedal edema, no generalized lymphadenopathy.
Okay, very good.
Vital signs, pulse rate 78 per minute, which is regular in rhythm, normal volume, no specific characters, felt equally in all 4 limbs. Peripheral pulses palpable, no vessel wall thickening, no radial and radiofemoral delay. BP 120 by 80 mmHg on left upper limb in sitting posture. Respiratory rate 24 per minute. The patient is afebrile.
Okay.
On local examination, examination of the left inguinal region. On inspection, the patient is having 4 × 4 centimeter hemispherical swelling visible in the left inguinal region, limited to the inguinal region only, not extending into the scrotum, which is smooth surface and margins well defined.
Right. Again, wait here. Hemispherical swelling. What does it mean to you?
Yes. So direct
hernia is possible. Yes.
If it's a bubonocyl, so it look like a...
Yes, most likely hemispherical swelling only in the groin, chances of it to be a direct, whether it is lateral to the superficial ring or medial to the superficial ring, that you can make out. Only in the inguinal, the possibility of direct hernia is very high, but this contradicts one small thing, that where patient on lying down, it is not reducing properly. No. Just a swelling in the groin alone, when you lie down, it will go immediately. Only a swelling which is coming into the scrotum, it takes some time to reduce, usually. But in the groin, if you make the patient stand up, the swelling appears. When he lies down, immediately it goes off. You said after coughing or some straining or exaggerated work only, the swelling appears. And this hemispherical swelling does not, doesn't correlate well. Are you able to get my point, what I'm trying to tell you?
Yes, sir.
History taking, you
Sir,
told
like
me.
physical activity, normal, I don't physical activity like walking and running.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Just
What
like
I understand that. What if it is an indirect hernia, it takes some exertion or some coughing or straining to produce the hair swelling to appear. But direct hernia, immediately when they start, the muscles are weak, you will have the swelling there. Okay, and when they lie down, it immediately disappears. But you said it takes some time to reappear. One, number two, he has to manipulate to reduce it completely. But the direct hernia reduces immediately. If it's a swelling in the inguinal region alone, it is. So there is some contradiction in your history and your finding. You have to just go back and verify with the patient. Okay, you understand that? All of you should be very clear. So if you are presenting direct hernia, one thing is important: the direct, indirect, all these things. When you are telling, if you have all the findings suggestive of direct, it's better. Indirect, it's better. Suppose you have contradictory, that is where you will face problems in the exams. They will start questioning you, why you are giving this finding is this finding that, how will you explain this? All this confusion comes. So when you have a doubt, you just go and verify it. Okay?
Okay,
go ahead.
Skin over the swelling appears normal and no dilated veins or redness scars, no visible peristalsis, and visible cough impulse seen. Penis normal in position, urethral meatus normal, scrotum.
Visible cough impulse alone is not important for hernia. Always say expansile cough impulse. Visible expansile cough impulse. Just cough impulse can be seen in so many conditions like Safina varix, lymph varix, all these things, varicoceles, all these things. You might have small impulse, but expansile cough impulse is classical of hernia. You have any doubt that this is a hernia or not? This is a hernia, right? You don't have any doubts left.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then it is an expansile cough impulse. It will be an expansile cough impulse. Expansile cough impulse means the swelling
I thought it was a palpatory finding.
No. When you see
expansile is related to only
when the swelling is increasing in size, expansile means the fingers are displaced. Expansile pulsation and transmitted pulsation is different. I am talking about cough impulse. Cough impulse, when the impulse is appearing on the cough, that is cough impulse. When you have the swelling size also increasing on coughing, that means it's an expansile coughing. It can be told in the inspection also. What you are talking about, expansile pulsation and transmitted pulsation is palpatory finding. Pulsation you are talking about, right?
Listen, I thought expansile now only in palpation we could say.
If you are not able to make out the swelling at all, just impulse alone, now you say I am not able to see expansive, I am seeing only cough impulse. You can stick to your, but what you said is you see a hemispherical swelling there, right?
Yes,
when hemispherical swelling is seen, when they cough, the swelling obviously will become bigger, right? The swelling will become bigger when they cough. That is expansile cough impulse. Okay, so no problem. If you say cough impulse also, it's not a problem. It's not a great wrong or something like that. I'm just telling you some points to improve. If you still want to say only cough impulse, it's fine. It's not a wrong thing or anything like that.
I thought only in palpation we should say.
I'm just giving you findings. If you want it, you use it. No problem at all. That's not a grave error or anything like that. I'm telling you, you are going to be strengthening your diagnosis of hernia, right? Okay, go ahead.
Appears normal. Inspection in supine position. Swelling disappears and reappears during cough.
Here again, it disappears on making the patient lie down.
By manual only.
Inspection, how can you use? Inspection, how can you do manual? You are in inspection now, no? Right? You understand that? What I am trying to say is, it might be there, but stick to what your inspection now, inspectory findings. Here inspecting, it decreases in size on lying down. You can tell that and leave it. On palpation, you can say that I'm able to reduce on manipulation, I'm able to reduce it completely. That you can talk about in palpation, right? If it disappears on lying down, one thing you have not mentioned, I think, is which posture you examine the patient.
Sir, earlier I said in standing, sir, inspection.
Always I will say standing and supine posture, I examine the patient solita. So it will be always useful for you. Whichever position you want, you can change your findings. I examine the patient both in the standing, I stripped him from abdomen to the mid thigh, and I examine the patient both in the standing posture and lying down posture. அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு you start go to your finding, that it will be useful. Your swelling disappears now, you have to make him lie down. So you don't have to say all these things.
Okay.
If you say I examine on these positions, I have examined the patients. அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு you go to the findings. That will be helpful for you. Okay. Right, fine. Go.
Okay. And examination of right inguinal region, 5 centimeter scar of previous hernia surgery, seen 2 centimeter above the groin piece.
Okay.
Palpation, not warm, non-tender.
Okay.
Inspectory finding, site and size and shape of swelling confirmed. Extent of swelling, 7 centimeter from the anterior superior iliac spine and 1 centimeter from pubic tubercle. And the expansile cough impulse present, cannot get above the swelling, and consistency was elastic.
Again.
Swelling.
Again, you hold it here. It is an inguinal swelling or inguinal-scrotal swelling?
Sir, it's a inguinal only, sir.
Where do you say get above the swelling?
So only in a incomplete indirect hernia.
No. When there is an inguinoscrotal swelling, when the swelling is extending from the inguinal region to the scrotal scrotum, then you want to know by getting above the swelling. Now, what you mean is this a pure scrotal swelling or an inguinoscrotal swelling? That is what you want to differentiate. When you have a swelling which is only limited to the inguinal region, getting above the swelling does not arise at all. You understand that?
Yes.
If it is the swelling is entering into the scrotum also, then you want to know whether the upper border of the swelling you can feel it. That is what we are trying to see by getting above the swelling. If in hernia, what happens? The swelling extends from the inguinal region into the scrotum. So you above the testis, you will be palpating some intestines there.
Yes.
Okay, so you will intestine or omentum something. You will not feel the upper border cannot be limited because it is go through the inguinal region. Then it is a inguinoscrotal swelling. Suppose if it is a hydrocele or something like that, it is a big hydrocele which is extending like that, you can still feel the upper border. Upper border, you can feel the cord structures. No content will be seen. Then means it is a pure scrotal swelling. This getting above the swelling is a finding you use to find out whether it's an inguinoscrotal swelling, whether it is inguinoscrotal swelling or a pure scrotal swelling. When it is only in the inguinal region, where you will see the getting above the swelling, it is no use. Okay? Right.
Consistency was elastic and swelling reducible manually.
Right. Again, wait. Consistency always stick to soft, firm or hard. Okay, whether it's a soft swelling, firm swelling or hard swelling. Elastic consistency, now what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything at all. You want to say soft, firm or hard. Always stick to that. You'll be safe always. Don't introduce confusion in consistency. Always soft, firm or hard. If it is ball, soft momentum, it might be a little bit firm or soft also. That's not a problem. But don't introduce cystic consistency, elastic consistency, these rubbery consistency, all these things and all are added findings. You say soft, firm or hard, you'll be safe most of the time.
Sir, your consistency only soft only.
Right, very good. Go.
Swelling reducible manually with initial difficulty and reduces with gurgling.
Right, okay.
Ring occlusion test.
What did you miss? What did you miss? What did you miss? Important finding. Go back. What did you miss? This expansile cough impulse. Oh, right. You have mentioned. Right. Okay. Go ahead. Next.
Ring occlusion test. After reducing the swelling on standing position, deep ring was occluded with left thumb. Swelling appears on medial side of occluded finger on coughing.
Yes, you understand this? Ring occlusion test is the one test, important test you do to differentiate between a direct hernia and a indirect hernia, inguinal hernia. Okay, when you reduce the swelling in the lying posture and you occlude the deep ring and make him to stand up, Or if a cough impulse is appearing normally in the supine posture, you can do it in the supine posture also. Suppose the swelling is not appearing on cough impulse on lying down, make him stand up. Reduce the swelling, occlude the deep ring, and make the patient stand up, ask him to cough. If the swelling appears, means it is not coming through the deep ring. It is coming something medial to the deep ring. So if it comes medial to the deep ring, it is a direct hernia. If it is not coming, means after occlusion of deep ring, that means indirect hernia. Here it is coming medial to the deep ring. The impulse is coming after, in spite of you closing the deep ring. That is deep ring occlusion. It is what does it mean?
Sir, it indicates that there is no indirect hernia.
It is no indirectly. It is direct hernia.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Sir.
Next.
Ring invagination test. After reducing the content in the recombinant portion, fold of scrotum invaginated in the left external ring using the left little finger, and the impulse is felt over the pulp of the little finger, and the direction of finger being upwards and backwards, and superficial ring patulous and admits 2 fingers.
To be honest with all of you, this ring invagination test, myself, I am not very comfortable in doing all the time, but examiners always ask you this. So you find out whether it is direct or indirect. My suggestion would be always you find out with direct or indirect hernia with deep ring occlusion test, and then you tell the answer about the ring invagination test based on that finding. Okay, here you want to say direct hernia, that's why you say it is in the pulp of the finger. It is simple. Your superficial ring is like this. So when your finger goes here, it goes directly behind. That means it is direct hernia. If it is indirect hernia, it will go towards the side. Okay, and the impulse will be on the tip in case of indirect hernia. Here it is on the pulp of the little finger, means it means direct hernia. Okay, don't worry that you are not able to exactly make out the invagination test properly. Don't worry about it. Most of the time, nobody will be able to get it because the swelling becomes very big. It may not be absolutely certain what you are doing. So you go with your ring inclusion test. If you do it properly, you can tell about the Siemens test, ring occlusion test, everything can be made up accordingly, right?
Okay.
Right.
Siemens test, after reducing the swelling on standing portion, the left index finger is placed over the left deep ring, and middle finger over the superficial ring, and ring finger over the saphenous opening. Impulse felt over the left middle finger on coughing.
Patient is lying down. How will you keep your left index finger on the deep ring and the middle finger on the superficial ring? How will you keep it? Patient, imagine patient lying down in front of you. All of you, I just want you to imagine the patient is lying down in front of you. You are on the left side.
Standing, sir.
No, whatever position. How will you keep it? The finger is like this. If it is superficial ring, this will be deep ring, and this will be femoral ring. You can't keep index. You want to keep the index finger on the middle finger. You want to keep the middle finger there. Hello? I just want you to remember one thing is left hand, right hand, all these things you do anything. Impulse is Siemens technique. Make yourself mind clearly. Middle finger, little finger, ring finger, and the confusion. I felt on Siemens technique. I kept a finger on the deep ring, superficial ring, and one finger on the femoral saphenous ring. Okay. That did the impulse you felt. Exam, I see most of the time they get confused in the keeping the left finger, middle finger, ring finger, all these things. Remember, important thing is if the impulse is felt only in the deep ring, that means it's indirect hernia. If the impulse is felt only in the superficial ring, it is direct hernia. If it is felt on the saphenous ring, it is femoral hernia. That's what you are very. Where is the saphenous opening surface marking?
Sir, 4 centimeter below and lateral to the pubic tubercle.
Below and lateral to pubic tubercle. What do you get there? What do you is there actually in that position?
Cribriform fascia.
Cribriform fascia is there. What is that ring? That is saphenous ring or femoral ring?
Saphenous opening.
Saphenous opening, you keep your finger, right? Where is femoral ring exactly? Where is femoral ring?
femoral is just lateral to the lacunar ligament, sir. Like
Lacunar ligament. It is below the inguinal ligament. It comes like this. Okay, the inguinal ligament comes like that, the lacunar ligament, and then it goes down as the pectineal ligament and iliopubic tract. Here there is an opening. That is the femoral ring. Femoral ring we will not be able to palpate. In Zeeman's technique, we keep 3 fingers on, one in the deep ring, one in the superficial ring, one in the femoral ring. Okay, if you feel, saphenous ring. If the impulse is on the deep ring, it is indirect hernia. If it is on the superficial ring, if you get the impulse, it is direct hernia. If it is on the saphenous ring, it is femoral hernia. Okay, this is what you want. The fingers doesn't matter. That's what I want you to confirm. But
okay.
if you can clearly, without confusion, you can tell in the exam, it's good. If it is not there, the idea is this. You want to find out which hernia based on the impulse in these ring areas. Okay? Okay, continue.
On percussion over the swelling, resonant note here, auscultation, bowel sounds heard over the swelling.
Yes, very good. Right.
Examination of right inguinal region normal, and examination of regional lymph nodes, no enlargements of lymph node. Examination of testis, foda, and penis normal. Examination of the abdomen. Abdomen looks normal in shape and not distended. Umbilicus in midline and fangs free. There is no dilated vein, scar, sinuses, no other palpable masses. On head raising test, no bulges are visible in the groin.
Malgagnis bulging. Malgagnis bulging, where do you see?
Can I mention?
Malgagnis bulging, will definitely say, because it tells us there is weakness in the muscle there, then only the Malgagnis bulging appears. Otherwise, you will not have weakness. So when there is weakness of muscle, the chance of direct hernia is very high. So the muscle is weakened there. That is what it tells us. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
No divarication of recti.
Okay.
And abdominal muscle to normal. Other hernial orifices are free. Perectal examination has to be done.
What will you look for in perectal examination?
Sir, look for fissures or fissures, fistulas, or strictures, any other prostate hypertrophy.
Prostate enlargement. So you want to see any anal stricture or prostate enlargement. Okay, right, fine. How will you know there is urinary difficulties due to prostate enlargement? What will be the first sign if there is difficulty in micturition?
Sir, overflow urine.
No. First and foremost symptom of an enlarged prostate will be increased frequency of micturition in the night. Nocturnal frequency will be increased. Okay, when you lie down in for sleep in the night, we don't get up in the night at all, or at least once you get up till the morning, none of us get up for passing urine. But when there is a prostate enlargement, what happens is they don't empty the bladder completely. So some amount of residual urine will be there. So when they sleep, within 3-4 hours, the bladder will again, they'll have fullness sensation. They have to get up and pass urine. Again, they will not empty fully. So they'll sleep and again the urine gets filled up. Depending on the severity of obstruction, they might get 2-3 times or anything like that. So when you are asking about difficulty in micturition in hernia history, always look about nocturnal frequency. Nocturnal frequency is one thing. Again, diabetics might have, because of polyuria, they might pass urine frequently also. But remember that one of the first signs of prostate enlargement causing urinary obstruction is usually increased nocturnal frequency. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Systemic examination.
All of them are normal. No?
RS normal.
All of them normal. We'll go to next.
Yes,
skip. Next.
Diagnosis. Left-sided reducible direct incomplete inguinal hernia with the bowel as a content without any complication. According to European Hernia Society classification, it's a PM2 grade, sir.
Okay. Now,
medial.
Why did you say it is direct? You have given so many things. Left side is obvious. It is left side. That's not a problem. You want to give me the direct inguinal. Why do you say it is direct inguinal? Yeah. Why do you say bowel has content? All these things. How will you justify your diagnosis?
Sir, on inspectory finding, it's a
Right from whenever the examiner, very good thing to start is whenever asks you to justify, it is a 15-year-old man. Okay, that will be my first thing. So older age, direct possibility one, and then there is a swelling in the left groin which decreases immediately on lying down. And that's why I said that takes some time to reduce. No, that is a finding against direct hernia a little bit. Indirect only it takes like that, but direct hernia usually it will go off immediately. Mostly, but it can happen. If it's a huge hernia, it may take some time to reduce also. That's not a problem. So, and then you come to the inspectory findings. You start from the history, from the age, by history, examination, everything. Whatever positive findings, each stages you have, you make up in your mind. Yesterday we had sebaceous cyst. There is a swelling there, swelling which pinchable swelling which is smooth surface, hemispherical. We had a punctum on inspection, skin pinchable everywhere except at the punctum. All these things are findings to say it is sebaceous. Like that, direct hernia, right from the history. Right from the beginning, history taking, you start accumulating the points why you say direct hernia. It's a good practice. First, whatever findings in the history, biodata, then your history of presenting illness, and then past history or anything. Upper inspection, general examination, inspection, palpation, anything. If you have Malgagni bulgings, you can add it in the last. That Malgagni bulging also is there. That tells me it could be done. All these things are in favor of direct hernias. Okay. Here we have a hernia in a 16, but findings, exact findings. Come to the inspectory findings now. Expansile cough impulse is there. That's why you said hernia. Then,
sir, yes. Sir, hemispherical bulge.
Yes, good. Only in the inguinal region, possibility of hernia, direct hernia is more. Then,
and
why do you say direct hernia? Findings, inspectory, palpation findings. Go, palpation findings.
Palpation, deep ring occlusion test.
Deep ring occlusion test. The cough impulse appeared after occlusion of the deep ring, right? Okay. And then Siemens technique, where was the impulse felt?
The impulse felt on the
finger over the, that's what I said. Impulse felt over the superficial ring. That is very easy, no? Now you are searching the fingers, right? You understand that? Why I was telling you that? You will, when you are writing, you will have all the time in the world to write everything. But on the when exam tension, left index finger, middle finger, thumb, all these things will get confused. So remember that when you are going to say Siemens technique, I will say the impulse is felt on the finger over the superficial ring. That is very safe for me. Okay? Right. Then.
Okay.
If you tell the fingers, it's good, but I want you to get the idea behind the test. The idea is, if the impulse is felt on the deep ring, it is indirect hernia. If it is felt over the superficial ring, it is direct hernia. If it is over the deep ring, indirect hernia. If it is over the saphenous ring, it is femoral hernia. That is what. So in deep ring occlusion, the impulse is appearing. In Siemens technique, you feel the impulse over the superficial ring. Deep invagination test?
Superficial ring.
You feel the impulse on the pulp. Pulp. Yes, you felt the impulse on the pulp. So that all these things tells you that is the deep ring. Okay, right? Why do you say it is incomplete hernia?
Sir, it's reducible partially on without any manipulation.
Is that is what is called as incomplete? What does it mean by when you get complete?
No, sir. Scrotal with along with the scrotum.
If it goes up to the bottom of the scrotum, we call it as complete hernia. If it is now up to the root of the scrotum or only in the inguinal region, we call it as incomplete inguinal hernia. Here you are saying incomplete because it is only the inguinal region, correct?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Why do you say it bowel as content?
Sir, on consistency and on reducing the swelling, first initially I felt resistance and in late stage it goes reduced.
Okay.
And on percussion, the tympanic like sounds.
Right.
And
okay. Right. Very good. Bowel sounds, sir. This is very good. This is bowel. Again, don't worry about bowel or momentum. Don't worry about it also. In it is a reducer hernia. When I am checking, bowel might have come. When you are checking, momentum might have come. So it is not. But what I want you all to remember is, whenever you are giving some palpation finding, auscultatory findings, or whatever it is, everything percussion finding, all of them should be in sync. He has given everything for bowel, so he is saying bowel. You should not give one finding for momentum and auscultation, no bowel sounds is heard. And so when you are, it becomes varied. No, that means you are not getting your mind right. That is what the examiners look for you in the exam. In the exam, we want to say, are you understanding the concept? Okay, here you are very clearly understanding that in palpation, percussion, auscultation, all of the there, you said whatever the feature of bowel you have given. So it is bowel. If you have given all these things for momentum also, I would have actually, I agree. Because when you check, it would have been momentum. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Right? So, but idea is, are they same thing? The direct hernia or indirect hernia also, all the findings should be in sync. That's why I was insisting on the history also. History was not in sync with our diagnosis, right? History, there was little bit difference.
Yes.
So why we always worried about the inspectory and palpatory findings. We forget about the history. All of us don't give much importance to history, but history important. You just make sure that that is also in sync. There is no question about it. Right? Sometimes we'll just like that, whenever most of the time patient, whatever we ask, they will be to please us, they'll give yes for all the things. Okay, so we have to be little bit clear in our mind what we are expecting. Is there any difference in finding or anything? You have to just go back and find out also history also. You might have to do it little bit. Okay, right, proceed further. How are you going to manage?
Sir, a new investigation and
patient, right? Very good.
Surgical man.
Right.
Baseline investigation, complete hemogram, BTCT, and urine.
Okay, fine. Liver function test is not necessary here. Okay, not necessary. But USG abdomen specific. What are you going to look for in USG abdomen? What will you ask the radiologist to find out for you?
Sir, post-voidal urine.
Yes, very good. First thing is to confirm the hernia is there or not. That can be done in ultrasound 1. But direct or indirect, it's difficult to find. If your ultrasound is very good, they can even tell you that direct or indirect also. But main thing is you want to confirm the hernia. That is what you do in ultrasound. Number 2 is you want to
content of hernia also.
You can make out definitely momentum or
content of hernia.
When as long it is a reducible hernia, our worry is not about it. No, we don't have to worry about it. But content of hernia can be picked up by ultrasound, number 2. Then what you want to ask about? Bladder, what did you say? What do you want to look at?
Post-voidal urine.
Post-void residual urine. What will be the normal thing?
Yes.
What would be the normal thing?
So 50.
Less than 30 ml is normal.
It should not be above 100 ml. Okay. Okay, but the significant is 100 ml.
So post-void residual urine, if it is less than 30 ml, we don't take it as significant. If it is above 50 ml, we take it as significant. What does it mean? What does it mean?
So that is prostate enlargement.
There is some bladder outflow obstruction. Patient not necessarily prostate. If there is post-void residual urine, that means what we call as BOO, bladder outflow obstruction. Most common thing in our part of world is prostate enlargement. So what will you ask the ultrasonist next to do when you have post-void residual? You check for post-void residual. What will you look for? Size of the prostate. Size of the prostate. Okay. You want to rule out a prostate enlargement, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Prostate enlargement. So ultrasound, you can make out the size of the prostate also. Okay. Anything else you want to look in the ultrasound?
Okay. Sir, USG.
To find out any other masses or
Any intestine
ascites.
obstruction
Very
or
good. Free fluid or any mass in the intra-abdominal cavity that will create increased intra-abdominal pressure to cause the hernia to occur. That is what we want to look. Ultrasound. So why do you do ultrasound in hernia and catana? We take about these points. First, you want to confirm the hernia one. Number two, you can see the contents of the hernia. Number three, you want to check the prostate size and volume, if it is increased or not. Number four is how much is the post-void residual urine? Is it significant or not? That we want to check up. Number five is any intra-abdominal free fluid or mass that we want to rule out. So this will tell us whether there is any precipitate, whether we have to treat something else before handling the hernia. Okay?
okay.
Yes,
Okay.
next thing. Next.
And surgical management, Liechtenstein tension-free open hernioplasty on left inguinal region under spinal anesthesia.
What are all the types of surgery? Then now we'll go to the discussion. What is Liechtenstein tension free? What do you mean by that?
Sir, the surgery is based on hernioplasty, sir, not hernia. We are using a Prolene mesh to cover the defect
Okay.
or to strengthen the posterior wall.
All of you, I'll go through it
To
little
prevent
bit.
the recurrence.
Yes, all of you, if you want, you note down also. There are various things in the surgeries. First and foremost, anybody can do, if it's an indirect hernia, we do a herniotomy first. What is herniotomy?
Just reducing the hernia and only the deep ring is deep ring is occluded, sir.
You don't say that. What you after reducing the content, after reducing the content, the ligation of the neck of the hernial sac and removing the redundant sac is called as herniotomy. I'll come back again. It is after reducing the content, ligation of the neck of the hernial sac and removing the redundant sac is called as herniotomy. Okay, in indirect hernia, this is the first thing we do as herniotomy. Then what is herniorrhaphy? What is herniorrhaphy? What is hernioplasty? What is
using any
Sir, in herniotomy plus narrowing of the deep ring with Prolene, sir.
Okay.
In
that is called as what is Little's procedure then?
Yes, sir. Little's procedure is the narrowing of deep ring with Prolene.
Right. Okay. What is herniorrhaphy?
Conjoint tendon.
Approximation
with
of
inguinal ligament
approximation of inguinal ligament with the conjoint tendon.
Yes, I will tell you the exact thing. What is herniorrhaphy? Approximation, strengthening of the inguinal canal. First is the strengthening of the inguinal canal by approximation of conjoint tendon with inguinal ligament using non-absorbable suture material without tension is herniorrhaphy. I will come back again. It is each and every word is important. If you remember, if you understand these words, it is self-explanatory. It is strengthening of the posterior inguinal wall by approximation of the conjoint tendon with the inguinal ligament using non-absorbable material without tension is herniorrhaphy. All of you agree? Yes. What is hernioplasty then? What is hernioplasty?
In hernioplasty, already there is a weakness of the abdominal wall. So
you cannot do
Prolene mesh to bridge the gap between the inguinal ligament and conjoint tendon.
Yes. Okay, this is what hernioplasty definition goes like this. Here in herniorrhaphy, I said strengthening of the posterior inguinal wall. In hernioplasty, we reconstruct the inguinal wall. So what we say is hernioplasty is reconstruction of the posterior inguinal wall by bridging the gap between the conjoint tendon and the inguinal ligament using a mesh or homogeneous substance. Sometimes before they used fascial and all. You don't have to talk about the homogeneous substance also nowadays. What we say is reconstruction of the posterior inguinal wall by bridging the gap between the conjoint tendon and the inguinal ligament using a mesh is called as a hernioplasty. A mesh should be a better terminology. You don't have to worry about the facial at all, not followed nowadays. So you can say bridging the gap to reconstruct. Reconstruct is important. Reconstruct the posterior inguinal wall by bridging the gap between the conjoint tendon and the inguinal ligament using a mesh is hernioplasty. Okay? Right? So what other methods are available? These two herniorrhaphy. Lichtenstein's tension-free hernioplasty is the gold standard method. Here it is a hernioplasty where they use polypropylene mesh. That is why it is called a Lichtenstein's method. They use polypropylene mesh. That is what is come as like that. So that is the gold standard procedure everywhere. What are all the other types of surgery available?
Sir, in hernioplasty, Stopper's procedure also done.
There are so many other things. You restrict yourselves to, if it is a congenital hernia, we just do herniorrhaphy alone, congenital hydrocele or congenital hernia. But indirect inguinal hernia in young adults, we do herniorrhaphy. If it is indirect hernia, we do herniorrhaphy and herniorrhaphy. If it is not there, nowadays herniorrhaphy is not done on most of the places. We do only hernioplasty alone. Herniorrhaphy is not followed nowadays. But for exam's sake, if they ask you in young adults, you can do herniorrhaphy also because their muscle is good, they're tension free. If you could do it, you can do herniorrhaphy also. But that is for exams. So open procedures, herniorrhaphy and hernioplasty are available. Is there any laparoscopic procedure that can be done?
Yes, sir. Total extraperitoneal placement of mesh or transabdominal preperitoneal mesh.
Yes, there are two procedures. Remember this, you have to offer if they ask you in exam, because this is commonly used nowadays. There are two methods available for hernia repair in by laparoscopically. One is TEP, TEP, totally extraperitoneal repair, mesh repair of hernia through laparoscopically. TAP is TAPP, laparoscope. Total abdominal preperitoneal mesh repair. Total, you go through transabdominal preperitoneal mesh repair. In this, what is these two type na? In TEP, they just go through the abdomen, but don't go through the peritoneal cavity. They go to the extraperitoneal cavity and keep the mesh. If you understand that, that's fine. In TAP, what they go into the abdomen, cut the peritoneum, piece the mesh and close the peritoneum over there. So if you don't understand the procedure also, I'm not worried about it. But remember, these two procedures are there laparoscopically. TEP is totally extraperitoneal repair. TAP is transabdominal preperitoneal repair. Okay, these mesh placement can be done. Okay, what are all the types of complications of hernia that can happen?
Complications of hernia.
Not talking about surgery. Hernia.
Strangulation. Strangulation.
Okay.
And obstruction, strangulation, and
irreducibility. So go off like this. It is first on the irreducibility. Irreducibility is the swelling is not reducing completely. Is called as irreducibility, but there is no signs of intestinal obstruction or gangrene or anything like that. Just the swelling is not going back, patient is comfortable. Sometimes he might have occasional pain. It is not reducible. Whenever he tried manipulation also, it is not reducing. It is called as irreducibility. Next is the obstruction hernia. Obstructed hernia, there is irreducibility. Irreducibility, there will not be any cough impulse also. So the swelling is not going back inside at all. But obstructed hernia, irreducible hernia, plus there will be lumen of the intestine will be obstructed. Lumen of the intestine is obstructed and irreducibility is there. Then we call it as obstructed hernia. In obstructed hernia, lumen of wall obstructed, patient will have abdominal distension, vomiting, complete absolute constipation, that is obstipation. They will not be able to passing flatus, they will not be passing motion also. That means because the bowel lumen is obstructed there. So this is called as obstructed hernia. First is irreducible hernia, where just the content is not reducible. There is no cough impulse, or the cough impulse might be laid there, but it's not reducible. Next is the obstructed hernia. Here, the irreducibility is there. You are not able to reduce the hernia. Plus, there is signs of intestinal obstruction like vomiting, not passing flatus. Absolute constipation is not passing flatus, not passing stools or anything like that. Abdominal distension, pain, everything is there. Then it is obstructed inguinal hernia. Third is the strangulated hernia. What is the strangulated inguinal hernia?
Irreducible plus obstruction, blood flow
obstruction plus blood supply loss.
Yes, that is the important thing. So there is irreducibility, signs of intestinal obstruction is there, and then what happens after some time, the blood supply to the bowel which is caught in the intestinal content is decreased. So the bowel goes in for gangrene. They develop locally there will be warmth, the tenderness will be there, they'll have systemic signs of fever, fluid loss, all these things will be there. So that is called a strangulated hernia. Strangulated is irreducibility with intestinal obstruction plus decrease in blood supply. Due to if you strangle your neck, the blood supply to the head is decreased. No, the blood supply to the brain is decreased. The patient can die. So same way, when the intestine is caught in that, initially only the lumen flow is affected. So they have vomiting and distension of lumen. After some time, once the edema starts setting in, the blood vessels also compress and blood supply is disturbed. Then they'll go in for gangrene. So that is. Third thing is called as a strangulated hernia. What is incarcerated hernia? Anyone? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What is incarcerated hernia? Incarcerated hernia, whatever bowel is there in the content, no, in that loaded feces will be there. That is called as, because of that they will not be able to reduce it also. So that is called as an incarcerated hernia. Whatever bowel, a colon or something is got obstructed in the hernia or not reducible, there is a lot of loaded colon you could feel, the loaded feces is there, then we call it as incarcerated hernia. Any other complication is there?
Sir, gangrenous ulceration.
Okay, that's all made up. Okay, we can have an. These are all the important complications of hernia. So irreducibility, when they're just irreducible, then is obstructed hernia. When there is irreducibility plus obstruction of the lumen, strangulation, where there is blood irreducibility, intestinal obstruction plus blood supply is lost, and incarceration is the loaded impacted feces in the content. Okay, that is incarcerated hernia. These are all the complications. Now I'll go to the next thing. What is the complications of surgeries that can happen?
Sir, during surgery, there will be hemorrhage due to stapling, that suturing the.
Always remember, whenever they ask for surgery, always remember hemorrhage. One thing is always bleeding is one of the complications of surgery. It can be three types of bleeding there: primary, reactionary, or secondary hemorrhage. Primary is on the table when I cut the patient, it bleeds. When you cut the skin for doing surgery, there will be some bleeding. That is called as a primary hemorrhage. When you cut the vessel, you will have bleeding. That is primary hemorrhage. What is reactionary hemorrhage? That happens on the table. Next is the reactionary hemorrhage. Reactionary hemorrhage happens within 24 hours of surgery. Why does this happen? You have cut a blood vessel and you have put ligature or something to stop the bleeding. Your blood vessel cut, you ligate, put sutures to control the bleeding. Within 24 hours, if the suture slips off and the bleeding, it starts bleeding from that area, that is called as a reactionary hemorrhage. Third thing is secondary hemorrhage, which you see in 1 week's time. What happens? The blood vessel you have cut, you have ligated, put a suture. What happens? That area becomes infected and sloughs off. That area goes off and then it starts bleeding. That is called a secondary hemorrhage. Whenever they ask any complication of surgery, you can always say primary hemorrhage. It can be primary, reactionary, or secondary. This is always there. Apart from that, what other complications can happen in hernia surgery?
Sir, infections.
Infection. Again, bleeding and infection. Yes, bleeding can always be, and infection are complications of all the surgeries. Next.
And
recurrence.
Recurrence is a very, very important complication. What are all the causes of recurrence of hernia? When the muscle tone is weak,
Sir, if herniorrhaphy,
it can be due to.
there is the chances of more recurrence.
Yes, always when they ask you why it is recurrence, why is it possible? Now there are always patient factor, the surgeon factor, and the material factor. These things can be there. Okay, patient factor na old age, muscle is weak, and their collagen levels when it is weak, they may have this. With surgeon factor na you have used it, tied it with extreme tension, lot of hematoma is there, you have not placed the mesh properly, all these things, there can be recurrence. Or the suture material breaks, or you have not used proper suture, then also there can be recurrence. Okay, right. Next, what other things can be there? Infection, bleeding, recurrence, then
bowel injuries.
bowel injuries, yes, that will happen. Bowel injuries, yes.
Post-herniorrhaphy hydrocele.
Post-herniorrhaphy. Hello?
Hydrocele.
The nerve entrapment. It is called as causalgia. Chronic pain in the inguinal region following surgery. What happens is, if the ilioinguinal nerve, which is there, is caught in the suture or in the mesh when you are repairing, it gets in the fibrosis and it is entrapment neuropathy. It is called as entrapment neuropathy. That will cause a chronic pain in the groin region. They will have severe pain in the groin after surgery that might persist for very long period. And you might have to do a surgery again and release the nerve or lyse the nerve to release that. Okay, to give them the pain relief. Sometimes it's a very, very problematic complication. They'll have pain all the time. That would be the problem. So one thing important during surgeries, you have to preserve the ilioinguinal nerves and ilioepigastric nerves, or you can neurectomy also can be done. Sometimes you can cut the nerve also. They'll have little bit anesthesia over there that will prevent them from this pain, or you have to protect the nerve during surgery to avoid this complication. Yes, what else can be the complication?
Post-herniorrhaphy hydrocele.
Post-herniorrhaphy hydrocele. When will you get it?
If injured cord structures.
When you have a large indirect sac and you have done a herniatomy and not removed the distal sac and you have left it out, there might be chance of fluid collecting in the sac causing hydrocele. Normal if you have removed the whole sac completely, process vaginalis, you will not have the post-herniorrhaphy hydrocele. It can be hematoma in the scrotum. If you have injured vessel or anything like that, post-surgery hematoma of the scrotum might be seen, or a contusion of the testis or something like that might be seen. But hydrocele had to happen. You have to leave back the sac distally. That only will cause that. Next, what other complication can happen?
Testicular swellings.
Testicular swelling, again, hematoma, injury. If you have injured it, then there might be a testicular swelling might be there. Okay, these are all the major complications. You just remember these things. These are all the. Now I want you all to go through certain things called as some certain congenital hydrocele, congenital hernia, infantile hydrocele, and indirect inguinal. What is the pathology in all these four things?
Descent of testis.
I've told you four things: congenital hydrocele, congenital hernia, infantile hydrocele, and indirect hernia. All of them have a common pathology. What is the pathology?
Persistent process.
Persistent patterns.
Right, exactly. Persistent processus vaginalis. So how do you differentiate these four things then? Can you differentiate clinically or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes. How do you do that?
Sir, if
Sir, in congenital hydrocele,
primary hydrocele.
Yes.
In congenital hydrosis, the processus vaginalis is connected with abdominal cavity. In infantile hydrocele, the persistent processus vaginalis up to the level of deep inguinal ring, it does not connect with the peritoneal cavity.
Yes. What is happening in the congenital hernia then?
Congenital hernia, the sac along with processus vaginalis is there.
For your information, processus vaginalis is the sac.
Okay,
okay. So you see, all of you are able to see this or not? All of you are able to see this?
Yes, sir.
So this is, you say this is a deep ring area, this is a scrotal area. This is a sac, we call it as tunica vaginalis in the latest day, processus vaginalis, which is formed during the descent of the testis. It is a tube of peritoneum which travels along the testis to the scrotum. What happens after birth? Now, this process vaginalis completely gets obliterated. What happens? It comes through the deep ring, superficial ring here, and comes to the scrotum. Normally, this processus vaginalis completely gets obliterated in adults. When it gets obliterated in adults, they cannot get indirect hernia at all. Suppose this sac usually closes, tries to close here, then closes here, and then closes complete. Suppose it's trying to close here, it closes at the deep ring, it is trying to close, but only a pinpoint opening remains, and these sac remain as it is. There it is closing completely, but with a pinpoint opening alone is there here, and the rest of the sac is remaining patent. Now they develop congenital hydrocele. Here what happens, because there is pinpoint opening, only fluid from the abdomen trickles through this and collects in the sac, that develop the congenital hydrocele. Here the swelling will be from the inguinal region to the scrotum. There will be inguinoscrotal swelling will be there. What happens in congenital hernia? The whole sac is remaining open. So this area is also freely open. The content, hernia, intestine or omentum will come from above to the scrotum. Then they form the congenital hernia in childhood. In adults, it forms the indirect inguinal hernia. What happens in infantile hydrocele is this is completely obliterated. No pinpoint opening also is there. It is completely closed. So they'll have an inguinoscrotal swelling only filled with fluid. It is infantile hydrocele. Can we differentiate them clinically? Yes, it can be differentiated. In infantile hydrocele, there will be a swelling extending from the inguinal region to the scrotal region. Fluctuation will be present. Transillumination will be present. There will not be any cough impulse will not be present. No reducibility will be there. Are you getting these 4 points? So the swelling will be from the inguinal to the scrotal region. Inguinoscrotal swelling will be there. Swelling is contained in fluid, so there will be fluctuation will be present. Transillumination will be present because it is clear fluid, and it will not be reducible. No cough impulse will be there. So this is infantile hydrocele.
Sir, but in infants, we couldn't able to elicit cough and all.
When they cry, child cries, the swelling will increase. That is the cough impulse part of it in children. Okay. Suppose in congenital hernia, congenital hydrocele, what happens is, because there is one small opening there, when the child is walking or moving in the daytime, the fluid trickles from the abdomen and comes and collects here in this sac. So the swelling increases in size. When they sleep in the night, what happens due to gravity from the scrotal sac, slowly the fluid trickles back into the abdominal cavity and the swelling decreases in size. This is that parents will give you a typical history of waxing and waning history. That means the swelling increases in the size by the time in the evening, but when they lie down, sleep for 4 hours or 6 hours, size decreases. But when you try to reduce here, there will be fluctuation to be present. But here, when you try to reduce it, the swelling will not reduce because it's going through such a tiny point. The fluid, you will not be able to reduce it. When you see it, you will not be able to reduce, but the parent will give you a definite history that it is decreasing in size when in the morning. Once in the evening, it increases in size. But when you try to reduce it, reducibility will not be there. Cough impulse will not be there. Okay. This is the transillumination will be there because it contains fluid. Fluctuation also you can elicit in congenital hydrocele, but there will not be any reducibility or cough impulse. This is, but history alone is a difference. Here you can, how can you differentiate between infantile hydrocele and congenital hydrocele? Now, their patient mother will give you a history of waxing and waning. Okay, and the third thing is congenital hernia. Congenital hernia is like any other hernia. They will say when the child walks or cries, the swelling increases in size. When the moment the child lies down for some time, immediately it decreases. When you see the child with the swelling, you will be able to reduce the swelling also completely. That is congenital because the hernial content is there. So again, suppose the obliteration is here and the obliteration happens here. In between, the sac is not obliterated. It is patent. Then what we develop is called as a encysted hydrocele of the cord. Encysted hydrocele of the cord. Here, the at the deep ring, the sac is closed. At the upper pole of the testis also it is closed. In between, the process vaginalis remains patent. There, the fluid gets accumulated. It forms a cystic swelling. How will you diagnose? Again, There will not be any cough impulse. There will not be any reducibility. But what happens is sometimes the swelling might be coming into the scrotum and going into the inguinal region. These sort of things might give you a false picture like it is reducibility. It is not reducibility actually. So how will you diagnose this? The swelling will be fluctuant. It will be transilluminate, but there will not be any cough impulse. That means in crying also it will not increase in size. How the typical test for N-cyst hydrocele is called as a traction test. Traction test means when you hold the swelling and pull the testis slightly from below, the swelling will come down. This is called as a traction test. So all these things, one simple thing is for all these things, what is the treatment? You know, pathology is the same. And that is persistent process vaginalis. What is the treatment, you know?
Herniotomy.
Yes, herniotomy is the treatment for all these things. Only thing, you have to be able to understand the difference between various things, and you should be able to differentiate it clinically, but the treatment is the same and the pathology is also the same. Right? Any doubts in this? Anybody have any doubt?
No.
Yes? Any doubts, anybody? If you have doubts, you can type in the chat box also up to this point. This infantile hydrocele, congenital hernia, indirect inguinal hernia, or N-cyst hydrocele. All of you are clear about this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay.
Sir,
So,
reducibility and cough impulse are absent in congenital hydrocele.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Yes, because when you are trying to squeeze it, it is such a pinpoint. No, they say one phenomenon called as inverted ink bottle effect. Why it is not reduced by an inverted ink bottle effect? I can't draw it and show it to you. I have not seen it. But so when you try to squeeze it, the fluid tries to go through that narrow point. Because it bulges, that narrow point is also compressed. So that is called as an inverted ink bottle effect. It doesn't allow the fluid to reduce immediately. But when the child lies down for some period of time, 3-4 hours, the fluid, due to gravity, the fluid slowly trickles into the abdomen. It will be the history typically given by the parent. But when you try to reduce it, it will not be reduced. Don't say that parent is telling you lies. Patient may not be telling you lies. It is the fact. When they get up in the morning, the swelling will be less. When they start walking and moving, they are playing child, the swelling slowly increases. When you try to reduce it, will not be reducible. Cough impulse will not be there. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Congenital, somebody, Nerai Mori has asked repeat features of congenital hernia. Congenital hernia is like any other hernia. Congenital hernia, the pattern process is fully open. The patient, when the child cries, the swelling will increase in size, or the child walks, the swelling will increase in size. There will be cough impulse, reducibility, everything will be there. Just like an indirect inguinal hernia, there is no question about it. Congenital hernia is same as indirect inguinal hernia. Only thing the difference is congenital hydrocele, infantile hydrocele, N-cyst hydrocele of the card. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So one thing that I told you, indirect inguinal hernia, all of you also told me that indirect inguinal hernia happens because of the persistent process vaginalis, right? Why some children develop immediately they say 1 in 25% of male have persistent process vaginalis. If I count here, 4 people are there, means Praveen, Mani Arsan, Akash, and somebody else is there. So that means the 4th person is going to have a persistent process vaginalis, but he is not developing hernia at birth, or it takes some time for the hernia to present itself. Why do you think the persistent vaginalis is present in so many people, but still not expressed? Are you getting my question? Do you understand my question, Praveen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There
So
you
without any precipitating factor, the chances of
what I am
hernia
saying,
may be
I'll tell the question once more. The incidence of persistent process vaginalis, according to various studies, is 25%. That is, every 4th male should have persistent process, but not all of them are developing hernia. Only few of them develop hernia. Many of them don't develop hernia, or they develop hernia at a very later date. Why do you think it is so? Not everyone is developing it.
So many protective mechanisms are
Very
playing
good.
important
That is
role.
what I want you to do. Hernia protective mechanisms are there in the body to prevent hernia from happening. So the body, whenever you are building your house, you build house on all four walls and roof, everything you put, no window or nothing you keep, it will be very safe. The problem is you also cannot go inside, you also cannot come out without windows or doors. So that is a problem. So if you keep a door for you to go in and come out, the chances of the door is used by you to protect your place. But happens is over a period of the door can get weakened. Anybody, if they just hit it, it can break and they can enter anyone. Something like that. The hernia orifice area, hernial region, inguinal region is protected by various protective mechanisms. Can you tell me what are all the protective mechanisms which prevents
Slab
hernia?
wall, slit wall mechanism.
Slit valve mechanism. What is slit valve mechanism?
The crude of superficial ring.
Yes, the crura, the external oblique aponeurosis ends in the superficial ring like this. It is present like this. It will be opening medial crura, lateral crura. It will be like this. When the muscle contracts, the aponeurosis contract together. So when you cough or anything, immediately the crura also contract like this, and they close the superficial ring. So hernia will not come through this. This is called as a slit valve mechanism. That's number one. Next.
Ball valve mechanism.
What is ball valve mechanism? What is ball valve mechanism?
During coughing and straining, the testis go and closes the superficial ring.
Testis
The
will not go
cremastic muscle.
testis will not go on blocked. Cremastic. So what happens? The cord structures are having cremastic muscles there. When they contract, cremastic muscle is a continuation of what?
Internal oblique muscle.
Internal oblique and the transverse abdominis. Internal oblique and transverse abdominis continues down as external cremastic fascia and muscle. What does external oblique continue down as?
External cremastic
fascia.
External spermatic fascia. External spermatic fascia. The middle is the cremastic muscle and fascia. What is internal spermatic fascia continuation of?
Continuous of transverse abdominis.
Transverse abdominis, correct. I told you.
Fascia transversalis.
Fascia transversalis. Fascia transversalis is the continues down as internal spermatic fascia, right? Whenever again the superficial ring is like this, when the cord structures goes through this, cord structure goes through. So when the muscle contract, abdominal muscle, the internal oblique transverse abdominis also contract. So the cremastic muscle, which is a continuation of these muscles, they also bunch like this. They form like a ball and block this area. That is called as ball valve mechanism. What other mechanism is there?
Shutter valve.
Shutter mechanism. Again, shutter mechanism is like this. The internal oblique and transverse abdominis originate from the lateral third of the inguinal ligament, and this is, you remember, this is the pubic tubercle area. This is a inguinal ligament like this. The muscle originates like this. From the lateral third, your muscle originates and inserts in the pubic tubercle. So there is arch-like thing, the muscle. This under the arch, the spermatic cord goes through. So whenever the muscle contracts, it shuts. It contracts. When it is relaxed, it will be curved like this. When it contracts, it becomes straight. So what happens? This curvature becomes strong and it shuts on the inguinal ligament like this. It is like this. Normally, when it contracts, it goes like this. So it shuts on the spermatic cord, preventing any content from coming inside. This is called as a shutter mechanism. What other things?
So the oblique nature of the inguinal canal.
Yes, oblique nature. Usually in birth, the testis cannot go through the internal ring. Superficial ring is here, deep ring is here. Testis will not go through this, turn left, then turn right. That sort of thing testis will not do. At birth, what happens? The superficial ring and deep ring are directly and behind.
Till infancy, the tube is
directly. The inguinal testis passes through a deep ring, superficial ring, and comes into the scrotum. As they grow up, the deep ring and superficial ring go apart. So the defect is not directly beneath it. If it is directly like this, the content will also come. Hernia will happen. So as they grow into the infancy, both the openings go apart. This creates the obliquity of the inguinal canal. It is not directly straight canal. It is an oblique canal. So the obliquity of canal prevents the hernia from happening. Okay, right. That is obliquity of the canal. Next. Whenever there is an opening, there is a support there. Here, the superficial ring is here. No, superficial ring is a defect there. So into that, the content should not come to the. They are supported in the behind by the conjoint tendon is protecting the superficial ring. Immediately behind the superficial ring, there is conjoint tendon is there, which prevents the content from coming here. Same way, the superficial deep ring is here. In front of it, I told you, the internal oblique and transverse. So the muscles are in front of the deep ring. So that also protects the deep ring. So wherever there is a defect, the muscle is there are protective muscles in front and back to protect it. So these are all the protective mechanism normally operating. When one of these mechanisms fail or the muscles become weak or anything like that, then they develop the inguinal. Okay. I think I have covered more about hernia. I have covered everything. Whatever will be asked for you in the exams, I have covered everything. I have told about the various direct and indirect. So what type of mesh you use in the surgery?
Prolene mesh.
Polypropylene mesh. Okay. If herniorrhaphy, what is the material you use?
Prolene suture 102.
Polypropylene we use for polypropylene to approximate also. The non-absorbable suture material normally used is polypropylene, normally in hernia. Okay. Any other doubts, any questions in hernia you have, you can ask me now.
Sir, whether hernioplasty is best or laparoscopy?
Remember that we are using a mesh to reconstruct the bridge between the gap between the conjoint and inguinal ligament. We are doing open or laparoscopy. Both are called as hernioplasty only because we are using a mesh to reconstruct the posterior inguinal wall. I told you, the definition of hernioplasty is reconstructing the posterior inguinal wall by bridging the gap between the conjoint tendon and inguinal ligament using a mesh. If you do it through open procedure, it is called open hernioplasty. If you do through it lap, we call it as lap hernioplasty.
Okay. I'm asking the recurrence rate.
Recurrence rate, if done properly, both the things should not recurrence, but should not have recurrence. But hernia laparoscopic procedure needs a long learning curve. You have to learn it for a long period of time to become master it, to do it without problem. Open, you can learn it very quickly. But any surgery for that matter, you need practice and skill to do it properly. But learning a open hernia mesh repair is a little bit easier compared to laparoscopy. It takes a little bit longer learning curve. When done properly, both have same recurrences. And one advantage of laparoscopy is we can cover in open procedure, you could do only direct and indirect defects are covered. You can cover only herniotomy is taken care of the indirect side, and you are covering the mesh to prevent the direct inguinal hernia from happening. That's what we do in open. But in laparoscopy, we can cover the obturator space, femoral space, everything. The whole myopectineal orifice is covered with mesh. So the direct inguinal hernia, the inguinal hernias, femoral hernia, obturator, all these things can be protected by doing a laparoscopy. That is the advantage of laparoscopy. Okay. And one more thing is, whenever there is a recurrent hernia, if you have a recurrence with open hernia, better to do a laparoscopy. If you have a recurrence with a laparoscopic hernia, do it through the open procedure. Because we are doing through two different places, you will have a virgin area to go with. It will be easy for you to do. Okay, anybody else have any doubts?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Sir, மத்தவங்க யாரோ கேக்குற மாதிரி. Hello? என்ன கேக்குறீங்க?
Any questions regarding hernia? Whatever be the questions, don't worry about it. You would have attended the clinical classes or theory classes, you have studied hernia, everything. I think all of the things I have covered in just a short session, 1.5 hours. I covered all the aspects about hernia. As far as clinical case is concerned, I think if you still have any doubts, you can just.
Sir?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Sir, good evening, sir. We are always asked to stand on the right side of the patient and examine, no, sir.
Yes.
What if a patient presents with a hernia on the left side, sir? So how do we examine him?
In supine posture, you all the patients, you are a right-handed. Now, mostly why we are standing on the right side of the patient. Now, most of us are right-handed personalities. Okay, it's very easy to do with when you are standing on the left side of the patient, you can use your hand like this to do examination. That's why most of the time we are asked to stand on the right side of the patient. Whether it's left side hernia right side hernia, your patient is going to come up, you will be standing on the right side and doing the examination. But when the patient stands up, it becomes immaterial. Whichever side is you are comfortable, you can do it. But it's not a hard and fast rule that you have to stand it. Most of the time, people examiners expect you, when the patient is in supine posture, you have to go on the right side of the patient to examine. If you, for some comfort, you want to go to the left side and do some tests, or go to the behind in case of thyroid examination or anything like that, that is permitted for convenience sake.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
I mentioned the meatus of penis and all normal, but I didn't examine it, sir. It's okay with that, or?
Yeah, I know most of the times the vital signs, the pulse, BP, you don't, temperature, you don't record, you just like that make it up, and this penis, everything like that. We always do that. That's why history is important there. History, if you take it properly, they have dribbling of urine, they have pain or micturition, any ulcer or anything, then it is there. But ideally, you do check it up once. It will hardly take 1 second. Why you miss it now? Because it is not in your system. In your mind, when you're examining, your mind is always occupied about differentiating between direct hernia and indirect hernia only. You are not worried about the precipitating cause at all, because you are not going to operate on the patient. You are just going to present the cases. That's why we miss all this. If you have it in the mind, I have to look at the precipitating cause also. That's why I said immediately, whenever you are starting each case, you have certain aims in your mind. In this case, hernia, now first thing that will be running in my mind is, the first thing I would look at is whether it is a inguinal hernia or femoral hernia. I look at it, and then if it is the inguinal hernia, I want to say it is direct or indirect hernia. And the next thing I want it is there any complication? These are the 3 things I want to rule out in case of hernia. So this, if I make it out, it's good for me. Okay, if these 3 things, so when you are looking at complication or anything like that, when you are, I have to do surgery now, I should eliminate the precipitating cause there. Complications there now, complications, to prevent complication, you should have the precipitating factors. So treating the precipitating factors now, you look at all these things too. If there is a tight phimosis is there, that also can cause a obstructed precipitated hernia. So just examining the penis will take just 2 minutes. You can do that. Rectal examination, I can understand you may not be well versed in doing rectal examination. I can, in exam, you can say I have not done rectal examination, sir, I should do it. But examination of penis and testis does not have any excuse at all in the exam.
Okay. Sir, if it's a case of chronic bronchitis, just during the episodes only, the patient gets exaggerated cough.
I didn't get you. Napa?
Sir, according to definition, the patient has more than 3 months of cough to 3 consecutive years. We categorize them as a chronic bronchitis, sir.
Okay.
But it's a medical management related wise. No, only during medicine they become symptomless, sir. If they continued smoking,
yeah, that you have to advise the patient. Stop smoking is the first advice you always give. When they have chronic bronchitis, you have to treat them. Then we do the surgery. It doesn't mean a chronic bronchitis is going to be reversed completely and he's going to have a normal lung. That's not going to happen. So we try to decrease the coughing episode. That's what I told you in the beginning, smoking, collagen, all these things you told me, that is not going to change. But the coughing due to smoking, we can decrease by decreasing the smoking episode. So that can help him in prevention. So once you keep the mesh in 3 to 6 months, once it becomes very strong, lifting heavy weights also you have to avoid if you are doing a hernia. These are all things you have to inspect. And Rohit has asked me why males are more prone for inguinal hernia than females. Females are more prone for femoral hernia. Simple reason: males have the testis. Descent of testis takes the process vaginalis downstairs. Okay, when the testis descends, it takes the process vaginalis down. So that's where when the process vaginalis is there, the chances of non-obliteration of persistent process vaginalis is going to happen. If it is not closing, then the chance of hernia is happening. That is what the reason. In females, testis is not there to descend. Only the gubernaculum goes down. So the formation of process vaginalis itself is not going to happen in all the people. It forms actually embryologically it's going to form, but it's not a important process there. That's why they say chance of the testis, all the testis are descending, so they'll have all of them have process vaginalis, which may be persistent in 25% of people, 75% of people it closes. Females also get the point. Females may also have a persistent process vaginalis. That's why the female inguinal hernia also can happen, but the chance of it is less because they don't have testis. Number 2, femoral hernia. Again, femoral hernia, why female? you have something like this. This is the femoral ring. The inguinal ligament, lacunar ligament, and pectineal ligament, and this goes like that. The femoral vein is here, and the femoral artery is here. This is what is the. Are you able to visualize the peria? I don't know about it. This is if you see the inguinal ligament, you are seeing from down below. Inguinal ligament, the pubic tubercle is going to be here, and the lacunar ligament is here, and it continues down as the femoral artery and femoral vein goes through this. This here, the femoral medial to the femoral vein, there is something called as a femoral ring. This is the femoral ring. That is the femoral that contains the deep inguinal ligament, lymph nodes of Clockwitz. The Clockwitz link. Why females have na? Because due to delivery or anything like that, the femoral vein blood supply can increase. So the chances of this femoral canal becoming enlarged by the femoral vein is high. So the chance of, so this femoral ring, they'll have more space, and the pelvic structure also, gynecoid pelvis, it is such that there is a bigger space in the femoral ring. So they get the chance of getting femoral hernia is a little bit more there. Somebody asked me about Scholdi's technique. Again, the herniorrhaphy, Scholdi's technique is here, the posterior canal, wall of the inguinal canal is reconstructed. The transversus fascia is like this. There is a defect here in deep ring is here. The transversus fascia is weak, so that is why it is projecting like this. What they do is you cut it, and the transversus fascia is like this. It is weak, means double and double press. You double press so that the stretch is decreased, so that it becomes tighter. No, something like a loose thing. You tighten it up. It is loose here like this. You cut it up and overlap it, and this is called as double breasting. This double breasting strengthens the posterior inguinal wall. That is what is the Scholdi's technique.
So if any complication is there, how will we manage? Like we increase the intestinal which get gangrene.
Those things are separate. You injure the bowel, you injure the blood vessel or something like that. That has to be tackled separately. You have injured the bowel means you have to do a laparotomy. Depending on the site of injury, you have to treat that. If there is injury in bowel or anything like that, it has to be tackled separately.
Okay.
Yes, by any other questions?
No.
Again, somebody, Shruti, has asked us, this patient has a previous history of right side inguinal hernia, was operated and now presented with left sided inguinal hernia. Is there any specific case in this patient? Again, what is the reason you think here?
The precipitating factor is not completely eliminated.
It may have not been addressed, or the failure of your protective mechanism there. Failure of protective mechanism first happened on the right side. You have two doors in your house. All the whole house is constructed at the same time. You have fixed the door, all that door same only. First one door becomes weak. After some time, the other door becomes weak. That's all. It is not a question of same way. The mechanisms which protects the inguinal canal might have been weakened there, or the precipitating factor has not been addressed. That might be the reason. Here, there is no cause of precipitating cause. You haven't told me any precipitating cause. Probably the weakness of muscle is causing this for him.
Sir, do we want to mention that in the palpation about the abdominal wall tone?
Yeah, that's what we told you. No, the Malgagny's bulgings. Malgagny's bulgings tells us the muscle is weak. When it is simple. When they leg raise it, when the patient lies down flat, hernia is very high. Again, herniotomy, I told you, no, neck of the sac, we ligate it. Okay. How do you identify neck of the sac on surgery?
It is the most constricted part.
Narrowest part of the sac is neck. That's one thing. Next.
Inferior epigastric part of fat.
Inferior epigastric artery.
Extra peritoneal pad of fat.
All inferior epigastric artery will be medial to it. Actually, the sac, say the indirect ring, when the sac comes like this from lateral to medial, the inferior epigastric artery will be here. The deep ring will be here. So through this, the hernia comes like this. So where the sac will, the inferior epigastric artery will be medial to it. Most of the sac will be lateral, the inferior epigastric will be lateral, but where the sac is lateral to the inferior epigastric artery, that is inferior epigastric artery is medial to the sac, that will be the neck. That is number 2. Number 3 is you see
extraperitoneal pad of fat.
Yes, exactly. Properitoneal pad of fat is there, seen there now. That means you have reached the neck of the sac. These 3 points are used to identify the neck of the sac, so that you can ligate it to do herniatomy. Any other thing, Pa?
Sir, the direct hernia will lack of the neck.
Direct hernia will not have a neck at all. Neck means
Okay.
neck will be there, it will be so wide. It
Okay,
just
sir.
comes like this. So whenever you see about herniatomy, it is indirect hernia only you are talking about. In direct hernia, you don't do herniatomy and all.
Just push the content inside and
Invaginate it and then do the repair. That's all.
okay, sir.
What is that triangle called as Hasselbalch's triangle? How you know where the hernia happens?
Yes, sir.
What are the boundaries of Hasselbalch's triangle?
Laterally inferior epigastric artery.
Laterally inferior epigastric artery.
Medially the lateral border of rectus.
Medially lateral border of rectus.
Inferiorly inguinal ligament.
Right, inferiorly inguinal ligament. So this is the direct hernia site can happen. The deep ring will be lateral to the inferior epigastric artery. I told you no, so it will come from that side. So this is the site. Hasselbalch's triangle is the site through which direct hernia will happen. Okay.
Okay.
There are various Gilbert classification, European classification, so many classifications are there. So if you could find out and if you know it, it's good. But whatever I told you today is basics. These are all the questions that can be asked. Various questions, I have covered everything. I think I've covered most of the questions in hernia. If you do it properly, you can just walk through your exams.
Sir, if Litter's hernia in book they're given if it is a content of Meckel's diverticulum, sir.
Okay.
Whether it's indirect, direct,
that's not a content at all. Those are all, again, those are all content. These are all for peculiarity sakes. If the appendix is there in the sac, if Meckel's diverticulum, whatever it is, it has to be dealt with based on that pathology only. You don't worry about indirect or direct or anything like whichever sac. Mostly in direct hernias, we don't open the sac at all. We just push the sac down and then do the repair. That's all. Indirect only, we open the sac and see whether it is there. So if at all you are seeing a Meckel's diverticulum or appendix or anything like that, it will be there in the indirect hernia only. Direct hernia, maximum the bladder can just take that protruder down. So that is the worry. So you never open the direct sac at all. You just push it back and do the repair.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else, ma? Vasant? Anybody else have any doubt, Vasant?
No, sir.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Right, ma? All of you are clear?
Sir.
No
Yes,
one,
sir.
don't worry. Don't worry, you go home and read also. When we meet next, if you have doubts, you can write it down in a paper and keep it with you. You can ask me in the next class also. No issues at all.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, ma?
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
sir.
sir.
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.